Hey, Social Studies 9. Hope you're doing good. We're going to keep plugging away with Chapter 4 today. We're talking about collective rights. Hope you guys all got the term sheet done yesterday because you're going to want that down the road. So let's get going. Today we're going to be talking about numbered treaties. We kind of addressed this yesterday real quick. We're going to go into a little more detail today. Numbered treaties are agreements, historic agreements signed a long time ago that affect the rights and identity of some First Nation groups in Canada. They have roots in Royal Proclamations of 1763. Don't need to know that date, but you just need to know that they've been around for a long time. In that Royal Proclamation, Britain sought to establish control over lands they had just claimed from France, right? So if you look back at your history, the French came over, established Canada, and basically Britain took it from them. So now Britain's trying to establish some control. So they signed these numbered treaties with First Nations groups to try and establish some control, okay? So this proclamation recognizes First Nations rights to the land and establishes the principles for making treaties through peaceful negotiation. Okay. Now, like I said, numbered treaties were agreements between the Queen and First Nation groups. First Nations agreed to share their lands and resources, and the Government of Canada agreed to terms covering First Nations education, reserves, annual annuities, and then some other matters, which we won't get into. So, why did this happen? Why did First Nations in the West and Canada negotiate these numbered treaties? Why would First Nations group agree to share lands? Why would the Canadian government want to sign these treaties? Well, there's a number of different reasons why. First thing is Canada wanted to build a railway, right? Canada wanted to build a railway to establish the country to connect both the Western Canada to Eastern Canada, because the vast majority of resources and people and government were in Eastern Canada. They're trying to move across the West, and without a railway, you can't do that, okay? Both sides wanted to avoid a war. This is a huge one. If you look to our neighbors of the South, a couple hundred years earlier, they had the same thing that we did, right? Europeans came into the East and started to migrate across the West. But what they did there, if you're watching the old, Western movies, is they didn't have a lot of peace there. What ended up happening is there was just war, and it didn't end up so well for Native American people in America. And for the simple reason is the Europeans coming across had guns. So a lot of people died. Canadians could see that. Both sides wanted to avoid a war, okay? Because no one wants to do that, right? So they signed these contracts to avoid that. And the last one is First Nations people want to secure their future. Again, they can see what's happening in the South. They can see that people are coming. They can see the train. They can see the technology. They can see all these things. And it's a losing battle. So what can we do to secure our future as a people? So that's why they agreed to the numbered treaties. Now, no problem, right? If both parties agree to these treaties, there should be no problem. Well, we obviously know that was wrong, okay? Now, before we go any further, click on this link right here, 500 Years in 2 Minutes. It's a CBC video. It's fantastic. Kind of gives you a real quick overview of as to why we have the problems that we have. So watch that and then come back, and then we'll go into a little more detail here. So, why do we have these problems? So, first off, Canada's government believes that First Nations gave up their land under the treaty, right? You signed this treaty, you're giving us your land. First Nations group disagree. And the reason they disagree is because First Nations people at the time did not think of land as something that you could own or give up. So you're seeing a real miscommunication between the two groups, right? Government thinks that they're giving us their land. First Nations don't think that anyone can own it. So they think they're signing off that, yes, we're all going to share the land and work together. That's what they think they're signing. First Nations people recorded treaties in oral histories in their own language, right? They didn't write anything down. They've got still some of the old contracts, and they have X's on them from the First Nations group because they didn't have a written language. They had an oral language. So you can imagine if I speak English and I'm trying to negotiate a treaty with someone who doesn't speak the same language as me, you can understand why there are going to be some problems with that, right? And they didn't write anything down. So as things get passed on orally from generation to generation, there's always going to be a little miscommunication there, right? Any of you that have grown up playing a game of telephone know that's going to happen. Canada's government recorded the treaties in writing in English. So the oral and written histories disagree on key aspects, right? So what we have and what you say we had are completely different things, right? So not only do we have different languages and different ideas as to who can own land and who can't, but you write things down, we record them orally, and now there's some disagreements with that, okay? What you'll see here on this map is just a map of all the numbered treaties that the Canadian government signed. You don't have to have this map memorized or anything like that, but just understand there's a number of them, right? And notice how there's none in Quebec, and we haven't quite made our way up into BC yet. Okay, so most of these, well, all of them took place in Ontario, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Alberta. Okay, so just kind of understand that. You don't have to know like where Treaty 11 is or anything like that, but just understand that. Okay. So that's what we're going to finish today. If you do get a chance, we're going to spend some time looking at it in a couple days. But really, grab your book and make sure you have a flip through chapter 4, specifically pages 152 all the way through. Just kind of have a flip through that, understand. Oh, I apologize, not 152. This is the worst video ever. Page 128, sorry, my bad. So flip through page 128, flip all the way through there, just kind of have a look at that all the way through to page 135. We're gonna spend some time going over that in a couple days. What that does is it kind of gives you an idea as to the different viewpoints that government and First Nations people had when they were signing these treaties, right? Signing treaties, and everything else that might have happened during that time. Like, that's the one thing I really need you to understand with this is Aboriginal groups and government had completely different viewpoints and perspectives, and then they come together and they're trying to figure out how to do this all together, right? But they're just coming from two completely different places. So if you can understand that, then you'll be in a good spot, okay? Again, any questions? You know where to find me. Later.